Hello and welcome to From Garden to Plate. I am Alice Erickson, the creator of this channel on YouTube. Throughout the content of this channel, I will be teaching you my tricks and tips on how to get the best yield out of the garden and how to utilize the bounty of your harvest into everyday delicious meals. Occasionally, I will also do how-to videos in order to make preserved items such as spices, salsas, and sauces. If that all interests you, please like and subscribe. In today's episode, I will be showing how I like to feed the microorganisms in the garden, and I will be making Italian herb from last year's bounty of a harvest, the dried herbs. Feeding microorganisms with natural matter, such as spent grain from beer, and I also leave the plants from the previous bounty, just the roots, and it will feed the microorganisms. The reason that is important is because they break it down and their waste naturally will feed the soil, and they prevent disease such as powdery mildew. So all I do is I take a top layer, spread it out with a rake, and that's it. Using dried herbs from the previous harvest to make Italian herb seasoning. This is my personal recipe that I have come up with, so I'd like to share it with you today. In order to do so, I'm going to be doing a close-up of all the items I have here, and then I will show you the process. This is the recipe that I will be using today. I have come up with it by utilizing the dried herbs from the garden and some store-bought items that I had to supplement because I don't have everything inside of the garden. So I would like to show you a close-up of the dried herbs. The instruments that I will be using is a spice grinder, a funnel for canning, a jar, a bowl to mix everything together. My recipe takes the dried herbs 5 times in those increments and only once on the teaspoon increments from the store-bought items. I'm going to start off by measuring the store-bought items. So per the recipe, I'm doing 1 teaspoon of the Himalayan sea salt into the grinder, 1 teaspoon of the garlic powder, quarter of a teaspoon of the cayenne, quarter teaspoon of the fennel seeds, quarter teaspoon of the black peppercorns. I will be processing this into a powder, and then I'll be placing it into the bowl in which I'll be using to mix. I will be doing the combination of the herbs 5 times in order to be the base of the seasoning. The sage is a half a handful, so only take a measurement of just half a handful, place it into the bowl, 1 whole handful, which is quite large, of the basil, and I use a spoon large like this for the rest of the measurements. So the crushed rosemary, the chives, the oregano, thyme, and the parsley. do 5 measurements of that, place it in the bowl, and then I use my discard bowl, which is the mixing. I will grind all this together, and then I will show you how to mix and properly put it into the jar. I have the last part of the dried herbs processed in the grinder. The store-bought seasoning and the rest of the herbs are in the bowl. I will mix it thoroughly with a large spoon in a circular motion until I get the proper mixture and everything is consistent. I will then take the bowl of the dried herbs and now Italian herb seasoning over the jar in order I will be containing it in, and slowly add it in. The Italian seasoning that is from your bounty of the harvest is finally done and ready to be utilized in everyday delicious meals. Just wanted to give a couple final tips. Spice grinder versus coffee grinder. I've learned the hard way that using the coffee grinder, eventually you get some weird off flavors in your coffee. Best to avoid that and use a spice grinder, which is better anyway because you get a more of a consistent powder form, thus better seasonings. The other thing I'd like to show you is when you are trying to store your herbs, place them into a bag that has a zipper. Use a food grade desiccant packet. Place it in there, you won't have any moisture issues that way. Thank you so very much for watching today. Hope to see you soon.